Examples of corporations that failed to understand the market. Example number one, Kodak. Kodak was the Apple of its day. Everybody wanted to work at Kodak. It was the most innovative company of its time. And the reality was everybody that worked for Kodak had a great job. Kodak decided that they wanted to double down on the film market as digital technology was coming out. Kodak actually invented the first digital camera, but held it from releasing it to the market because they didn't want to put their film business out of the running and out of the market. They chose to hold that back, and that's when Sony came on to play, and Sony essentially took over everything when it came to digital photography. Now nobody thinks of great cameras when they think of Kodak. They think of a company that used to be around and used to do cool things. Number two, Nokia. Everybody knows Nokia. The story is one of the main case studies of why corporations fail to innovate. Nokia actually started out in 1871 as a paper mill. They were a paper factory. And over years of innovating and understanding the different marketplaces that they were a part of, they eventually got into the telecom industry and hardware. One of the fascinating things about Nokia is at their peak, they were worth $70 billion. The early 2000s, 1 out of every 3 phones was a Nokia. In 2007, Steve Jobs unleashed the iPhone, which essentially put thousands upon thousands of people out of business. The goal these days is to understand your marketplace and continue to grow with them. What Nokia failed to actually meet expectations was that they needed to work on user experience and software, and they missed their chance. Number 3, Xerox. Xerox, for the longest time, was the phrase for doing a photocopy. When somebody said, I'm gonna go make a copy of something, they said, I'm gonna go Xerox it. Crazy when we think about it now. Xerox didn't understand that over time, people would actually start competing with them and eventually wedge them out on price. Unfortunately, Xerox didn't understand that digitalization of documents was coming down the pike. Nobody buys large Xerox machines in the ways that they used to back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Xerox now has a situation where they really need to figure out a new way to innovate within their marketplace or eventually die out. It's one of those really frustrating things that they didn't experience all of this fluctuation of revenue and then find a way to put new revenue into different markets. Number 4, Blockbuster. Blockbuster is a mainstay or a part of Americana as far as I'm concerned. Everybody had one of those weird little Blockbuster memberships. Here's the reality. Blockbuster had chances to acquire Redbox, and prior to Redbox, it was an opportunity galore to actually acquire Netflix, one of the highest, most rapid growth companies in recent memory. The reality is Redbox was worried about competing on its own business model with tangible stores and didn't want to give people a convenience factor of having things either mailed to them or streaming online. The market wasn't ready for that, but they weren't putting any revenue into exploring the concept of new business models. Now, nobody talks about Blockbuster as a place to go rent or go experience anything in the way of media. If you don't look at new revenue models, you will miss out in the long run. Number 5, Yahoo. Everybody knows of Yahoo because it's such a tragic story of what could have been. In 1998, Yahoo refused to buy Google for $1 million. Think about that. In 2002, Yahoo realized that it made a giant mistake and offered Google $3 million. And Google said, nah, if you give us $5 billion, we can talk. Yahoo said, no chance. In 2008, Microsoft offered Yahoo $40 billion. Yahoo said no. In 2016, Yahoo sold to Verizon for $4.6 billion, a far cry from what it would have gotten in past eras. If Yahoo actually got out of its own way and decided to acquire smart and interesting opportunities, they would have scaled so much faster. Number 6, Segway. Segways were all the rage when they first came out. Everybody thought the Segway was the new form of transportation. If you look at malls or inside of even schools, a lot of people were using Segways. Now there's still Segway tours within large metropolitan cities, but it's come a long way. The reality is that Segway was a new invention, a new theme on the marketplace that was supposed to rapidly change the market. Unfortunately, it wasn't adapted to the average consumer because they were priced extremely high. So only the most expensive, lavish people of our time could actually afford a Segway scooter. Number 7, IBM. In the 1960s, IBM was the first and only computer company that was actually producing computers at scale. Now, they only focused on the corporate market. Those that could afford to use computing power were only the largest companies in the world, and they thought that was the future. Unfortunately, personal PCs, real at-home gameplay, was not within their future understanding of growth. They lost out big time on the marketplace because they refused to build cheaper computers that were able to be acquired, used, purchased by the every person. Nowadays, nobody thinks of really nice laptops or really nice PCs in general as built by IBM. Number 8, JCPenney. JCPenney used to be the department store to go to. Everybody knew about JCPenney. JCPenney is where you went to get everything from clothes to shoes to even in-house supplies, whether it was a nice new table or even power tools. Crazy. Unfortunately, JCPenney didn't realize that there was a huge marketplace building up called the internet, and unfortunately lost out on scaling on a digital platform that honestly was taken over by Amazon in the long run. The reality is, one of the biggest numbers that came out of failure within JCPenney was the closing of over 100 stores within the span of a year, losing $985 million within 1 year of seeing Amazon rocket ship growth, essentially putting their marketplace to shame. The reality is, big box stores are not performing the way that they used to. People don't want to necessarily go to a store when they can buy things online from the comfort of their home or on their phone. Number 9, TiRack. TiRack was a very niche store that was peppered all over the UK and part of Europe. The goal was, if you are a fancy business person and you need yourself a nice tie, you only go to TiRack. They didn't understand that diversifying their product line would eventually get them in trouble or at least put them out of business. In the 80s, everybody wanted the cool fancy ties, but the goal was, with these guys, they wanted to take over the market. Unfortunately, a lot of other big box stores decided to also start selling ties at a discounted rate and eventually put these guys out of business. Now, when we think of buying ties, we either think of going online or picking them up for super cheap at fast fashion places, whether it's H&M or one of the other manufacturers that you can get a tie for less than $5. My name's Taylor Ryan. I'm from Clinton Marketing. I'm putting out a ton of content. Like and subscribe to see more.